Specifically, I want to talk a little bit about what a team of students in Portland State did last year, and then get into larger code base issues. So, Josh Triplett and I sponsored a computer science capstone project at PSU, where we had the students build an Xorg driver with the same functionality that you get from an XNAST or Zephyr. And the reason that we thought that was an interesting thing to do is because, frankly, we think that having separate X servers is dumb these days. So this is why when I wrote on the future of the Xorg codebase, I want to start the discussion proposing that the DIX-DDX split should go away. But my agenda for this session is that I got in at 5 this morning into O'Hare, and so my plan is to get you all fighting and then go take a nap.
See, you're not supposed to tell us that.
I'm not? Oh, forget I said anything. So, let's see. So the Xorg driver, just briefly, Paulo Zanoni, I think is his name, in Brazil, had built a nested input driver. So it would, you'd load this driver in your xorg.conf, set up a suitable screen section, and you'd get a window that you could send input events to, and they'd show up in the backend server. And so what we had our students do was add video to that. I've got that exactly backwards. He did the video part, our students did the input. It's been a few months, and I'm tired. So the result is that now you can set up an xorg.conf that you can have as many screen sections as you want. They all show up as separate windows on some real X server somewhere. There can be different X servers, sort of all the things you expect to work, except that input on the second and later screens shows up in the coordinate space of the first screen, which is, we never actually tracked down what happened there.
I know one. I think so also.
That's cool. So that's the state of that. So so our hope was that by getting this work done, we'd be able to obsolete XNAST, Zephyr, and XDMX. And arguably, the community's already obsoleted XVFB and XFake, because you can just have use the Xorg dummy video driver to get the same effect. And the big remaining problem there, as far as I know, is simply that Xorg does not run on Mac and Windows. And all of those other standalone servers do. So at the moment, these things like XFake and Zephyr are the only option for Mac and Windows to get that kind of functionality. So open problem, right? I think it's important to get Xorg running on Mac and Windows. I don't have any personal plans to make that happen. I just want to throw that out there. So all that leads towards getting rid of this DIX-DDX split. If we actually got the Mac and Windows DDXs also turned into Xorg drivers, that would be it as far as I can tell. And the reason that I think it's important to get rid of this split is that it's kind of arbitrary. It's this API that we have to maintain, and it just means that the code base is larger than it needs to be. And given the size of our development community, anything that makes the code base larger than it needs to be is bad. So that's my proposal for what the Xorg code base needs to, how it needs to change. And I'd like to open up to discussion on what you all think is important. Like I say, take my nap.
Is that the x86 as a web organization and Windows? What are the actual technical reasons for that?
The best explanations I've heard have come from Alan. And I know you don't have personal experience with it, but you've at least thought about it.
Well, so our company has yet another DDX that's closed. That's the X new one for Sunrise. And I don't know, probably some thoughts there. Is the PCI Pro just isn't appropriate for a lot of these devices. There's a lot of ancient history there. So the Sunrise is a thin client that basically is the X server runs on a server box and has a custom protocol like VNC to communicate up to the client. So as far as the X server is concerned, all your video and input devices are just over a TCP port. So scanning the server for PCI devices is kind of pointless because you're not going to use it. And then when you've got a server that's serving 100 clients, that's a long time to wait for information after use. Because those are typically 10 gigabit servers. So the DDX split, there was the ancient history of the old X consortium controlled the DX.
Yeah.
The DDX was the individual vendors, and X86 done a lot of stuff in their DDX that really belonged to the DDX layer. But they had free reign over the DDX.
Certainly a excellent starting place would be to start moving things from the x86 DDX to the DIX layer. That would be better than
Things like
nothing.
modular, we've talked about that for a long time because we should be able to have a single X, or even if we don't use x86 DDX on Mac and Windows, we should be able to have a single X server with local modules for Nest, Zephyr, whatever.
And maybe in some sense that's all I mean, right?
Some of that work has been going on. If you compare server 1.3 with current XOS input, half of X input used to have an x86 DDX, but that X input extension was separately generated in the DDX and so on and so forth, and that's all in the DX now. So input-wise, the x86 is just an X of the compiler.
Yes, but that's because you're awesome.
Because they experience it.
No.
But
Between the two of you.
that work has to be going on because I don't think it was part of the coordinated effort, which was like, it's duplicated everywhere, those things are the same. So maybe we just need, the people who push with that.
It's definitely what I'd like to see.
But configuration parser, there's no reason that should be in the execution parser. So all these do.
Yeah, with KMS, most of the hardware related stuff can go away anyhow. But we put somewhere so that some of the older drivers can still use it. It's rather optional now. So this PCI scanning stuff, where it's still needed, could be picked from somewhere else. And we could look at the core server.
So I've wondered.
Can go out of the DDX and then the DDX becomes really small and
Right.
will disappear.
Eventually atrophies. Yeah. I've wondered about, from an architectural standpoint, having some functionality move to libraries instead of having drivers just assume that it will be present in the core server. I don't know whether that makes sense.
The libraries can link in.
Sorry?
So the libraries can link in. The drivers can link in the
Right.
libraries and on the server.
Yeah.
It will give a little bit bigger memory footprint if you have more than one library.
My problem with libraries is you open yourself up to get to the API implementation.
That's true.
So you have the literal pixel per compiler API just wants a survey and where else you just agree with an API. And we're part of that API.
Although you could argue that we have that problem anyway, because we're already providing that API out of the X server.
Yeah, but not intentionally. But once you start doing something intentionally, you don't have this excuse of like, well, you shouldn't use that. Well, because the whole point of why is it use it. So, I mean, the other question is it more work to move the x86 DX into X, or to move X-Ports and X-Link into drivers for the x86 DX? Because that's a lot of code that you want to move there for, with no functional change other than essentially messing up the whole API. Because you don't know all the dots.
about his plane getting in late.
We might be asking him how much effort he needs to move from his schools into the leagues rather than the other way around.
Yeah, I'd love to get his opinion on that.
What language we talked about years ago, Doug was working on this, the SAC EMU, looking at to a separate library. I think he's got to give a repo of that, but we never actually followed through.
Right. It kept getting reviewed with critiques, as I recall. And I don't know that they were necessarily important ones, but it seemed to be enough to stall it. Well, so I've said what I think is important. What do you guys think is important? Yeah, there's the question of documentation, certainly. I titled this codebase, but documentation really is an important part of that. I was hearing someone muttering documentation over here, so I thought I'd point at you. You guys are going to make this a really boring session. Don't make me do a dance. It's not going to be pretty. Right.
Well, if you do your dance, you'll finally break that one.
I'll pass, thanks. I guess another thing that I'd like to see is output hot plug. I mean, I know a lot of people are interested in that. I put a lot of work into trying to remove the max screens limit, figuring that was a relevant part of output hot plug, but it was really only a small part, despite how huge of a project it was.
You talked to Dave about that?
To who?
Because he's been working on that for a couple of months now. And it's the famous quote somewhere is like Friday 4 o'clock is not a good time to figure out the new configurations and see. So
Yes, I did talk with them at LCA about that. I would love to hear how it's going.
I see it's weird, there's like C channels every once in a while. So he's still working it, but it's not true yet.
Yeah, I know it's not trivial.
He does some branches on some way,
So that's for actually creating new screens
Yeah.
as opposed to just new user random regions.
Well, so we have this unfortunate bit of terminology, right? In that we use the term screen inside the X server to refer to the screen structure, screen rec, right? And then we also use it in the protocol to refer to what clients see as a screen. And with Zenorama, those aren't the same. In some sense, I don't really care. For output hot plug, I don't really care whether it's just hot plugging new screen recs and having Zenorama make them magically, make the protocol not see a change except in random events, or whether you do something like new clients get to see newly added screens and old clients don't, or something crazy like that.
And the application is for adding in video cards.
Yeah. Leonard's been working on multi-seat integration in System D and using UDEV tags and stuff. And he mentioned to me at Plumbers that one obvious thing to want would be, you plug in some new screen device, and it shows up in seat 0 because you don't know where to put it yet. And then you have a nice GUI that lets you drag it over to seat 2. And there's no way we can do that without output hot plug. I think it's going to turn out to be necessary that if you're doing output hot plug, you're using Zenorama. I don't think anything else makes sense, but
Yeah, not that much is what they work.
yeah, well, probably protocol work, because there's even with Randor, there's nothing to tell you when a new screen appears in the protocol sense.
So screen hot plugging
that's one of the use cases I was interested in for the XOR nested driver.
Yeah, that's, and the other idea would be, I believe there are USB video devices
Yeah.
today, so those kinds of things. So do we have any kind of support or architecture for either of those two flavors?
So the way Leonard's done multi-seat with the USB devices today is that one particular hardware manufacturer provides a USB device that is a USB hub and a USB video adapter and USB sound card and keyboard and mouse as all one unit apparently. And you can recognize the particular vendor of that hub and the devices under it and know that because this is all one integrated device, it's reasonable to assume that those all belong to the same seat. And so the UDEV rules they set up are when you plug in one of these devices, it's automatically assigned a new seat number. And when a new seat appears, they automatically kick off a new GDM or whatever, new display manager running on a new X server. And that sidesteps the problem that we don't have output hot plug support because it's a new